Forbes Books presents Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow. Transformation for a new and better world. Here's David.
Joining me this week is Jeff Boutelle, the CEO of Nature Made's parent company, Pharmavite, a subsidiary of Otsuka Pharmaceuticals. Jeff previously served as CEO of Beech-Nut Nutrition and worked for major brands like Abbott, Nestle, and Procter Gamble. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, David. It's great to be here.
Jeff, before we talk about you and your leadership journey, let's talk about Pharmavite. Nature's Made is the market leader in the $17 billion vitamin and supplement industry. When we think about Nature's Made, we think about value proposition of a category market leader with a premium image and in certain cases, pharmacists best recommended in vitamins and supplements. I would guess the primary demographic is college-educated women 25 to 64 plus. How far off am I, and what is the secondary demographic?
Well, you just demonstrated a really keen insight into the category already, David. I'm impressed. When you step back and look at the category, I like to frame it up as it up until recently was kind of an older person's category. So, young people think that they're invincible. Then they hit the 40-year mark and have the big birthday party with the black balloons and all that stuff. And then they say, oh my gosh, I need to do something to take care of myself. And they start taking vitamins. And so historically, our core heavy user has been, I'll just simplify it and say baby boomers. But that has rapidly changed. What we're seeing in the category and in our business as well is a lot of younger consumers coming into the category. And there's three reasons for that, which I find pretty intriguing. First is millennials and Gen Z are much more, I think, attuned to proactively maintaining their health, I think, than baby boomers were. Secondly, the pandemic fueled a huge growth in the category. Just a laser focus on immunity in particular, but well-being in general. And we saw that really affect usage across all age groups, but in particular the younger folks. But the third factor too is gummies. Historically, vitamins and supplements are primarily tablets and then soft gels. And gummies are the fastest growing form and highly preferred by younger consumers. It's more accessible to them. It's an easier way to take vitamins. Younger consumers are not so keen on tablets and soft gels that they kind of refer to as pills and so forth. So we're seeing a real shift in the category in terms of younger consumers engaging in proactive well-being.
You held your first CEO seat at Beech-Nut Nutrition. At that point in your career, you held several senior leadership positions. Why did you think you were ready to take the lead of that company? Entrepreneurial, positive growth, mindset, or glutton for punishment?
Probably all of the above, David. I'll start with glutton for punishment. I'll change the words to I love challenges. And I love the whole nutrition space. I had spent a lot of time working with moms and babies. I was a brand manager on Pampers. I was the general manager of the pediatric nutrition business for Abbott Nutrition in the U.S. So that's products like Similac and Pediasure and Pedialyte. And, this was just a role that was tailor-made for me because it was my first CEO role, as you mentioned. It was in a space that I just am comfortable with and I have a passion for. And it presented many challenges in terms of turning that business around. Oftentimes, people who work at big companies like P&G and Abbott Nutrition and Nestle, when they go to a smaller company, the concern is, can you make the transition from a large company where you've got all kinds of resources and budgets and so forth to a small company where you're resource constrained and you don't have the benefit of that big company infrastructure. And I turned it around because I wasn't a big company person making the transition to a small company. I felt that I was always a small company entrepreneur working at the large companies. And I always sought out and found those more entrepreneurial types of roles within those companies. And so the transition wasn't all that hard for me. And I love to roll up my sleeves and get into the business. I love to recruit and put together great teams and figure things out and be responsive and agile and super close to the consumer. And I love that about Beech-Nut, because at the bigger companies, oftentimes you're not as close to the consumer as you really should be. But we did everything at Beech-Nut based on that intimate, close understanding and relationship that we had with millennial moms.
Digging deeper to understanding the categories leading to your core strategy, could you tell us about the category growth and comment, please, on branded competition such as Nature's Bounty, Nature's Truth, others, and private label? Where is the industry trending beyond this, both nationally and internationally? And where's your mindset on this? Where's it going?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, the category, it's large no matter which way you slice it. And you're pretty spot on when you mentioned 17 billion. You know, we compete primarily in the grocery, drug, mass merchant, and Amazon. And really, if you define it differently and start to include natural channel and multi-level marketing and maybe expand even the definition of supplements, it could be as big as $30 to $50 billion. All of it is growing strongly behind this a focus on health and well-being. The category, if you go back to 2020 when the pandemic hit, the category, and I'll go back to how we were defining it, you know, grocery, drug, mass merchant, and Amazon, it grew at 21%. 21% growth. And this was followed on by growth of 9% in 2021, which is impressive considering it's coming off of a strong and elevated 2020 base. That growth continues in the low single digits right now, but all of those time periods, 2020, 21, and currently, Nature Made outgrew the category fairly significantly, and we've been growing market share. As far as competitive goes, you know, we have seen another fundamental change in this category, David, over the last, starting about 7 years ago, I'd say. First off, there's been a lot of small companies entering the category. And these are entrepreneurs who are developing, you know, new ideas, fresh ideas. Typically, it's direct-to-consumer brands, and then sometimes they'll go into brick and mortar. So you see a lot of action and activity kind of from the ground up. But the other phenomenon is the big global CPG companies have entered the category. And literally none of them were in the category 7 or 8 years ago. But Nestle has amassed quite a huge portfolio through acquisitions. So have several of the other CPG companies. And so this is bringing a lot more attention, investment, and I think excitement to the category, which we view as good. It brings consumers down the aisle, and when consumers come down the aisle, we benefit because people know us, people trust us, pharmacists recommend us, and you know, at the core, this is what we do 24/7, 365 for the last 50 years is develop and sell high quality vitamins.
That seems natural, so to speak. I was involved with Eggland's Best and Cage Free and Free Range and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But the nutrition side of it was that it started where people were obviously interested in food with nutrition, and now they're trying to eat up your market share. Now, just a question, what percentage of your business is private label, if any?
Very little. We make about a third of one of our largest customers' private label products, but that's about it. It's all branded.
You know, when you think supplements, it's like goodness. How can we best buy value with BOGOs and it seems endless trade promotion? You maintain the premium on shelf pricing of over 25% to the competition. Nature's Bounty and others, and 10% greater than private label on a visit to CVS recently surveyed, which is really weird because private label is above your competitor's brand price. I'm trying to understand, and our listeners would appreciate the structural understanding of this category like this.
Sure, it's a very complex category. I'll say more complex than any category I've ever worked on in my career, and the pricing dynamics are certainly more complex than just about everything I've worked on before as well. And I'll just step back and say, generally speaking, when you look at the category, we're the number one brand with about an 11% market share. Most number one brands and categories that you look at are not at 11%. They're maybe 20%, 30% sometimes, and so on. The number two brand is Nature's Bounty, and they're probably around 7%. And then from there, you have a couple 4% share brands, and then you have this really long tail, 2%, 1%, 0.5% brands. So it's a very fragmented category. And the way to think about it, David, is you've got broad line brands, and that's what Nature Made is. It's a broad line brand. It covers your letters from A to Z, and typically, single ingredient types of products. And we include multivitamins in there. So that's where you're going to find Centrum and One A Day and so forth. That's about a third of the category. You also have another big dynamic, which is, you mentioned it, private label, and including Walmart's private label. That makes up a significant part of the category as well, but that's still broad line. Then what you see, and this is where you see a lot of those 1 and 2 and 3%, kind of brands, is in the segment that we call specialty brands and lifestyle brands as well. And these are the brands that stick to their knitting. They do one thing, they do it well, and they've got a certain credibility, and they can command a premium price, because of that credibility and so forth. So that's a space that we are just getting into literally as we speak in a big way. But historically, Nature Made services that broad line need for consumers on an everyday basis, really at an everyday fair price. And I think I know that we command a premium price versus our competition because of our strong brand, but that's really built on the foundation of an unwavering commitment to quality over the last 50 years, since day one. And that's been important. This category, if you go back 20, 30 years, people have used the word Wild West, until it got regulated. It's been very, very important to build that trust. And it has taken us 50 years to build this trust, which has been very hard earned. And as you know, it can take you just, 10 minutes to lose that trust if you go off that path.
How do you balance consumer marketing and trade promotion? You can share what you'd like, percentages, dollars, whatever, but where do you see yourself and what you do and why it's important?
This is fundamental to why I came to Pharmavite. This category historically has not been brand or consumer driven. It's historically been get on the shelf with distribution, heavily promote, and then there has been consumer pull, and very little, I'd say, industry investment in long-term R&D. So one of the big transformations that we've made over the last 5 years, and it's difficult because culturally speaking, marketing has never been really strong here at Pharmavite, and now it's world-class. And so we have taken a lot of steps over these last 5 years to rebalance our investments, looking at everything, including looking at discretionary spend and then pulling back and redirecting it towards R&D, innovation, and marketing. So the other thing, David, is 5 years ago we didn't have an innovation pipeline or capability at all, and we've invested heavily there. And now I'd say we've got definitely the industry-leading innovation capability and innovation machine, and we can talk about that because it is the reason we've been doing so well and that we've got such a bright future. But I'd say that right now we are spending probably 4 times as much in marketing than we did, say, 5 years ago, and it's all very well thought out, well placed. We've got a great marketing team that works very closely with our sales organization, which works very closely with our innovation group. So it's this nice tight ecosystem that we've developed, and so they all of the spend and all of the activities work very, very closely together.
When I just see some of those big bottles when I go into Costco and other clubs, I'm thinking these guys must be selling a ton here. Perhaps a little bit less on margin, but goodness gracious, their sales are great. Along that vein and high volume, does the 80-20 rule apply? The best movers like omega-3 or vitamin C approved and cholesterol for CoQ10, or is there other new emerging things that are coming that are surprisingly to us listeners blowing the doors off in terms of sales?
That broad line, just the fact that we're a broad line brand means we have over 450 SKUs that we offer. And, the 80 for the 20 does come into play with us. And we historically have been strong in the immunity types of products, which really served us well when the pandemic came along. So this is vitamin C, it's vitamin D, zinc, more recently elderberry, and, loosely I'd say multivitamins too. Could be considered in immunity, but we don't. But those have been the really strong sellers for us over the last several years. The other key trends right now, and this is a very, trend-driven category over the years, but, right now, in addition to immunity, the other two really big dynamics is sleep and it's mental wellness. 70 million Americans suffer from sleep issues, according to our trackers. 77% of Americans report feeling that stress affects their physical health. And back to immunity, 60% report taking deliberate steps to support their immune system at least weekly. So what we're seeing is, and especially during the pandemic, melatonin segment dramatically increased. Fish oil is very strong for us, as you mentioned, CoQ10 as well. And then we have all these other products that we offer on an everyday basis that, as you said, is when you look at the 20%, 80% rule but they're important for us and our consumers to make sure that we've got that broad offering.
It seems that the CBD line seems to be a little bit new, and some people are staying away from it because it's too correlated with THC. Is that a concern for you guys?
Yeah, we're one of those companies who's staying away from it. Back to our roots and our foundations and our principles, we do not launch anything or offer anything that isn't scientifically backed. And CBD isn't until there's clinical, studies, safety studies, a reliable supply chain. It's fully legal. We're not even going to look at it. And so there are trends that pop up that aren't necessarily good for the category. And I'll give you a great example. A couple of years ago, an upstart brand launched a apple cider vinegar gummy. So a lot of people take apple cider vinegar with some water in the morning to achieve various benefits, but these folks put apple cider vinegar in a gummy and made some very egregious claims. And to get the benefit of apple cider vinegar that you get from, real apple cider vinegar and just drinking it with your water, you really need to eat about half a jar of these gummies. And so if you're taking, if apple cider vinegar is something you're using for weight loss, and by the way, that was one of the key claims of this brand, that's just counterintuitive. Anyway, this brand was taking off. It just was a fad and it was popular and it grew to something like, $200 million almost overnight. And internally, folks were saying, well, gosh, we got to offer apple cider vinegar gummies because of look at all the sales, and we said, no, it's not scientifically backed. There's absolutely no fundamental reason that this product should even exist, especially in a gummy form. And so we didn't enter into that segment. Well, they've been hit with a couple of lawsuits in terms of the claims that they've made, and that's not good for the category that they're doing that. And actually the sales are plummeting now. So, we back to that point that I made earlier, it's taken us 50 years to build this trust that we have with consumers. And it could take one false move like that to blow that trust with consumers if we offer something that's not scientifically backed.
And just for the benefit of listeners overall, your bulk sales brick and mortar, they coming through the pharmacy channels, CVS, Walgreens, or traditional channels or superstores, and then I'll follow that up with, what percentage is also going to come from your direct to consumer, such as through Amazon and through your website and other matters.
So we're about $2 billion in retail sales. Our largest customers are, in no particular order here, but the top five-ish are Walgreens and Costco and CVS, Target, Walmart. And of course, all those, grocery stores and mass merchandisers all have pharmacies, of course, within their buildings. And vitamins and supplements are typically placed near the pharmacist in drugstores, of course, and in the other retailers as well. Prior to the pandemic, e-commerce was probably around 12% of our business. And the pandemic really accelerated for us and for everybody else too, obviously, the kind of adoption and usage of e-commerce. We saw our e-commerce sales double up to about close to 25%. It's moderated a little bit to maybe around 21%, and it's kind of held there. And so we have omni-channel is this word that's been being used for many, many years. And up until recently, I think it was just a concept that people just talk about. But it's become real. It's as we look at how our consumers buy our products, it is direct to consumer. It's Amazon. It's what we call retailer.com. So that would be like Target.com and Costco.com. And then, of course, brick and mortar. And they all work together, and all of the pricing schemes have to work together and so forth. And even in consumer usage, sometimes a consumer will research a product online and buy it at the shelf, or even sometimes vice versa. So there's a lot of dynamics going on with our retailer channels right now as well.
Just want to follow that up with taking a look at the overall category and what you're selling, and on the micro level with all the different SKUs, with customers having barriers and requirements in order to stay on the shelf, and you're trying to maintain your overall shelf space, if not grow it. Would you be kind enough just to go through how you analyze that internally, and when you're going to present like a new SKU, whether or not it's going to be a replacement of your existing SKU, or whether or not you're going to add to it and try to push? Could you go through that dynamic?
Yeah, and we've adopted it might be, you could call it simple, or you could call it elegant. I think it's kind of both, but approach to how we look at the category. We have a pretty commanding shelf space at most retailers. And it's important to manage that shelf responsibly for the retailer, because that real estate isn't getting any bigger, and they need every square inch to be as productive as possible. And so we have a pretty sophisticated category management analytics group who really analyze, and we don't do it kind of like one size fits all. It's customer by customer. The movements of the products, the types of consumers who are coming into their stores, and so forth. And so if we have products that are lagging at a particular consumer, we will target those as items that we want to pull off. But then also at the same time, we want to be bringing in new items, whether they're renovation items or innovation items, and so forth. But we kind of, as we do our strategic lineup management approach, which is tied in with our R&D and innovation and so forth, there's 4 areas. There's draft, there's defend, there's disrupt, and there's drive. And so we develop products that have different roles, if you will, as we come to the retailer. So a draft or a defend item might be something where it's a 10 milligram version of melatonin in addition to a 5 milligram or something like that. So it's not breakthrough innovation, but it's certainly meeting a need or bringing some new news to the retailer. A good example of disrupt is Nature Made Well Blends, which is a new sub-brand that we are launching as we speak. This is pretty disruptive. It's a new lineup of 13 items, and as I mentioned earlier, there's this specialty kind of lifestyle brand space, and that's where we are. We've designed Nature Made Well Blends to compete. It's not a broadline sub-brand. It is a sub-brand that is very focused on blended products that are curated specifically to meet the needs, as of right now, focusing on sleep and stress and immunity. So that's how we kind of think about the shelf is again, being responsible and knowing that the retailer needs to optimize their shelf sets, And then we need to optimize, therefore, our lineup to optimize sales for everybody.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Well, hang on, Jeff. We have to take a break. But coming up in the second part of my conversation with Jeff Boutelle, the CEO of Nature Made's parent company, Pharmavite, Jeff shares his thoughts on why being a people-focused leader is the hallmark of great leadership.
Probably one of my greatest joys is assembling and forming and enabling a team to accomplish great things. It's just exponential.
To connect with David, go to davidradlow.com. David's book set, The Principles of Cartel Disruption and Secret Stories of Leadership, Growth, and Innovation are available wherever books are sold. This has been Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow, a presentation of Forbes Books.